In this episode of GYDA Talks, Robert sits down with the wonderful Susan Hallam. Susan is founder and CEO of Hallam, a strategic digital marketing agency based in Nottingham. Hallam is a prestigious agency and is currently Google's #1 agency for growing businesses online. This podcast is vibrantly rich with snippets to take away, so grab a cuppa and pull up your most comfortable office chair.
And good morning and hello to the GYDA Initiative Talks. And today I'm absolutely, totally delighted to have with me what I consider the wonderful Susan Hallam. Susan Hallam from Hallam Internet up in Nottingham. Hello, Susan.
Oh, and it's reciprocated right back at you. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We started already with the mutual back slapping, which is absolutely great. Susan, could you just give us a bit of a background, a bit of a flavour of how you got to where you are now?
Sure. So I'm the founder and CEO of a digital marketing agency, as you said, based in Nottingham City Centre. You know, I don't know if you know, but we're celebrating our 20th year anniversary this year.
Wow.
So I set up the company 20 years ago, and I think like many agency owners, I started as a one-man band for 10 years or so, and then over time have grown the business. And as I say, growing the business, we are currently Google's #1 agency for growing businesses online. We have recently won the Google EMEA Award, which is fabulous. And we've also, I don't know if you know, recently won a string of awards from the Drum. So in terms of best web design, best user experience, best usability. And we are the Grand Prix Agency of the Year for agencies our size. So I think for a small agency based in Nottingham, we punch above our weight.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. I do remember, so I was just doing the calculations in my head of what 20 years ago was and when that was. And I said my first experience of being in agency land was the Millennium Bug and were the planes going to stay in the air and how did it work. So, you know, doing my maths, we're in 2020 now, that you launched just after Millennium Bug.
And what a big deal that was, you know, and I think it's a really good indicator, Robert, in terms of what people worried about then and like, what are we worrying about now? I guess we always have something to worry about, don't we? But that was a seminal moment, wasn't it, in terms of the planes falling out of the sky?
Yeah, I mean, I was on the top of Salisbury Hill, as in climbing up on Salisbury Hill, because that's just around the corner from us, because we're kind of in Peter Gabriel land. And it was very foggy, but everyone was looking up at the sky, so saying, "Oh, the planes are going to stay, or are they not going to stay?" And they stay. So what sort of head count are you on now in Nottingham?
So we're sitting at just over 52 members of the team, and our team comprises a series of our roots were in search engine optimization and pay-per-click, so that's our largest team. But we also have a growing business intelligence team. And of course, we could talk perhaps a little bit about the fact that our agency underwent a merger. We had a merger, so we now have a full creative team in terms of design and development and branding. So we are that full service kind of agency.
Let's get to the merger at some point, because I think everyone is really curious about the merger, both sides of it, because it seems like a kind of no-brainer to add new clients and add new people in, but I think you and I know that these things aren't always as straightforward as they appear to be in the textbook where it says. Mm-hmm. And also, the other thing that drives me bonkers is you read these books and it kind of goes, we were 20 people, and then 5 years later we were 120, and it's like, you've just missed out. Like, how did you do that? And I guess in a way this podcast is about trying to help people understand those gaps and fill in the dots. So let's just, I mean, talk to us about that scaling of the business. What were the biggest challenges that you faced trying to scale a business from zero to 52?
Yeah, and it's interesting that, of course, going from being a sole trader to taking on my first employees, that was one big challenge, was to be brave enough to actually physically open an office, hire people, and take that responsibility on. But actually, that was easier than I thought it was going to be. And I think then, I think speaking to you, you've advised me over the years to say, you know, there are moments where it's like 7 employees is quite different to 17 employees, is utterly different to 27 employees. So I think I went through that classic curve of growing the business, and I think one of the main things I learned is I'm not the first person to do this. You know, there's a lot of experience out there. There's a lot of people who have done this. So get as much help as you can. And I do know, so in terms of scaling the business up, I know one of the biggest challenges I faced right off the bat was processes. I know what I'm doing, and I hired initially some really smart people like Ben Wood and stuff, who's still with me now all these years later. And we know what we were doing. But to scale an agency, you have to have these things documented and written down so you can do it on a cost-effective, profitable basis. And that was a bit of a culture shift then, the fact that we had to write processes down. We couldn't just wing it and be smart and do what we wanted. We had to be able to bring a team together so that we could all be working collaboratively and pulling in the same direction. So I know for me, some of the biggest challenges had to do with that kind of process-driven activity.
So how do you, just out of interest, very quickly, how do you pull together your processes? Have you got something like Process Street or bits of software, or is it a handwritten thing, or is it a wiki?
Yeah, so it started, I think, as a handwritten thing, but then we ended, like you said, we ended up creating these quite unwieldy documents that nobody would read anyway. And then we translated them into visual representations of what needs to happen. And I think as we've hit the size of the agency we are now, we're now using things like MavenLink. I don't know if you're familiar with MavenLink, but this is actual proper project management, which then allows you to do repeatable processes in a way that you can also then measure what resources is it taking, what's gone well, what hasn't gone so well. But we have, we've gone through a number of different systems over the years, trying to find what's going to work best for our culture.
And do you see yourself at 52 headcount? Do you? Two questions. One is 0 to 52. Where do you think was the hardest bit, just in terms of where it kind of got like, this is actually really, really hard? I mean, obviously from 0 to 1 in staff is really, really hard because it's a growth of infinity in terms of delegation. It's not the same as 51 to 52, but I'd be really interested to know where you found it toughest on that journey, and also I'd be quite curious to know where you think it's going to stop.
Yeah, and in terms of it's, I think having an agency is kind of like having a baby. You tend to forget how awful and painful it was because there's always something good around the corner, isn't there? You know, but I do think, upon reflection, I do think it has to do with those sevens again. It was kind of like 17 people was really hard, and all this for me, and all of a sudden financial control got more important. You know, there was more risk involved. Processes were more important, and I think also at 17, that's when we really had to make the effort to start looking at culture, deliberately looking at culture to figure out who are we, what do we stand for, what kind of team do we want to be. So I think for me, 17 was really that transition into that 17 space. It wasn't like we were 3 little teams of 5 or 6 anymore. All of a sudden we were just more than that.
Yeah.
We had to introduce new layers of management. We had to introduce great, you know, so there more control. For people like me as the entrepreneur founder of the company, I wanted to get away from the control. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to work for British Telecom anymore. I left BT because I didn't want to work there. And all of a sudden I had the feeling I was recreating the very environment I didn't want to work in.
That's the craziness. So the reason you set up, I've got to be careful on this one. The reason you set up on your own is because you want to be able to, you know, in effect, you know, work in your night clothes on a laptop on your bed without anyone knowing what you're wearing, and do your own thing and have your own rules and do it your own way, and you know, be radical and be challenging and only work with clients you want to work with. And there is that day when you realize you can't remember the names of all your clients and the work you do with them, and it's going to be committed to some kind of a file and some kind of a filing system. And that other day where you realize that different people in your business have a totally different idea about what product X looks like, and you've got to systematize and process it. And the very thing you were sticking 2 fingers up at was systems and processes and bureaucracy. And now you just created your own bureaucracy. I mean, it's madness in a way. But I think that it's, you know, if we go through the question, why are there so few 50-person agencies around? You know, why do so many crash at 5 or 10 people? It is, I guess, because the agency owner doesn't have the skill set to flip from, whoa, we're doing business, aren't we wonderful? Yeah, we'll do anything you want, we love you, oh, we're in business, to hey, we've got to pay bank manager, hey, we're responsible for 10 people's rents and mortgages, hey, we've just taken out a bank loan for £300,000, hey, we're now, and it's kind of, yeah, without any disrespect to smaller agencies, because I think they're awesome. It's a kind of a growing up thing that not everyone can do or wants to do, and it wasn't what people signed up to.
It is, and again, my own background. I come from a family of teachers. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a teacher. I actually was a senior lecturer at the university. Can you imagine my parents' reaction when I left a teaching job to set up my own company? So I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs, and yet it worked out really well, and I've really enjoyed it because you do learn something new every day. You have to be open to the opportunities. I've learned loads of stuff from finance to HR to operations. So I think if you've got the mindset that you want to learn something, it should work out okay. But you have to add the pixie dust that has to get added. Still has to be that kind of tenacity and perseverance, because I think when the going gets tough, I had to hunker down and get on with it. There's no running away. There's no hiding. You've just got to do it. But I think my secret weapon, as you say, to get to an agency of this size, is I did surround myself by other excellent people. So I recruited well. I've got Jake Third. I've got Ben Wood. We're working with Julio Taylor. So as an agency this size, it really isn't about me anymore.
And how about the fact that you're a woman? I mean, I think that we do these podcasts. You're number 40. You're probably the fourth woman that I've interviewed. That's in the class. I ran a program you were on with Google. There were 40 people in the room. There were maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 women in the room. Mm-hmm. I mean, those odds are not even odds. It's that sense of being in a minority. I mean, what's your view on that? Do you see that as a great advantage because you stand out, because you're unique, or do you see that you're trying to thrive in a man's world? What's your position? What's your take on that whole thing?
I think they're two different things. You may have noticed, by the way, I'm not a local girl either. I was obviously born and raised in the United States.
Is that not a Nottingham accent?
It ain't a Nottingham accent, trust me. So I think actually, in terms of uniqueness, I think being American has actually really had a huge marketing advantage. And I think for some reason, 20 years ago, probably less so the case now, people thought because I was American, I was smarter or better at stuff, which was a great angle to play. So the American thing, I think, was really important. But in terms of being women, I think women, it's still a great untapped resource in the technical space. While you were chatting, I was trying to think of women digital business agency owners. I can think of Anne Stanley at Amica. Yeah. I'm trying to think of others off the top. Then I know Alita Solis, you can think of her. Yeah. And there are more and more women appearing. But I do think that really I was in the minority. And even now, there aren't that many of us, I don't think.
Yeah. And more's the pity, but maybe that's to your advantage because you stand out, because you're not another guy wearing a black crew neck with a pierced nose and a hoodie. And I know I'm making sweeping generalizations, and the tattoos, but there is a look of blokey agency owners in that smaller founding area, and I wonder if just by definition you stand out and therefore you're remembered better.
Yeah, and I think it's partly that, and I think it's also partly, I think one of the hardest things for agencies is to how do we differentiate ourselves, as you said, from all the other agencies that are out there. Because we all do SEO, we all build websites, we do these core things, but what actually is the essence that makes you different? So on the one hand, it may be the fact that I'm a woman business owner, but I think it also came down to the fact that in terms of that trust and credibility, and we have always been on the relatively serious end of the digital marketing scale, that we, in terms of professionalism that has always been our calling card, and I think that has stood us. That's actually what's been important to powering our growth.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, so I've followed your business for a long time, and as you know, I've always been a great fan of your consistent, persistent, relentless, I'm not quite sure what the word is, but your social media presence, which is like every day someone in your business seems to win an award, or you win a piece of business, or you've done something for charity, or you've run this amazing event, or you've done something with the Nottingham Playhouse. And it's the voice. What I love about it is, you know, the voice is consistent through everything that you do. It's a bit like, you know, like you cut a piece of rock. The Hallam brand, the Hallam brand values, not that I know what they are line by line, but you receive this consistency of, you know, we're not kids, we're grown up, we're on top of things, we're about the community, we get stuff done, we know what we know, and I guess that's paid off. And I think one of the troubles with trying to look back on why our agency or our business has been successful is there may have been other agencies doing exactly the same stuff, identical to you in some town nearby, but for some piece of luck, they didn't bump into this person, they didn't bump into that person, their bank manager was fired, the loan went belly up, whatever it is. They're in the graveyard of businesses, and it's really hard to try and work out what are, you know, every book has its the secrets of success thing, but it's really quite difficult to actually pin down, you know, why you've been successful and other businesses have been fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, I think part of it has. I think there's one underpinning element, and I know it's a cliche, but I would call it is our North Star. It's kind of like, what is Hallam about? And the fact is, we are excellent. We love your business as much as your business, you know, as much as you love your business, and we will help you to succeed. So by thinking about our North Star, that we are really proud of who we are really good at what we do, we actually love what we do, then the social media just drips out the bottom naturally. In some respects, there's kind of marketing activities, they just arise almost organically because they are aligned with our company North Star. So you mentioned the fact we have this CSR activity. We organize something called the Nottingham Digital Summit. It's taking place on the 23rd of June this year. And that activity, it's free to attend in return for a donation to our charity of the year. This year it's the Refugee Forum, which is great. But the reason we do it is we are in a very fortunate position as an agency that we succeed and we are able to give back. Does that make sense? So I think it's just making sure that you keep the vision about what is excellent about your business, and then the awards, the celebrating our team success, about being good to each other, about loving our people. It just happens naturally. I think if you feel like you're having to force it, then you need to go back to your North Star.
Yeah. So I was at Nottingham for your digital summit.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I can only say it was a remarkable event. Actually, it's run over several different venues. It was a lot of speakers that people normally pay a lot of money to see. I think speakers all gave of their time for free. Great vibe, really good ice cream, I remember, and good people. I mean, great people. So if people are around for that, I say go. So that's interesting. But do you think so? This thing, do you think there's a tipping point where suddenly it stops being like hard work and you're pushing stuff and trying to make stuff happen, where suddenly I don't know, it's like LinkedIn, like the algorithm suddenly gets who you are and suddenly promotes you? Do you think there's a piece in the business where suddenly you stop pushing and you've got enough momentum that it actually starts carrying and actually building, more like kind of this, I'm mixing metaphors, more like a snowball gathering? Do you think is that what you saw?
I think That's partly true. That let's look at, for example, early doors, and a really important part of our strategy. This is like 20 years ago, was all about. You talk about content marketing being a new concept. Get out of here. Content has been our thing for 20 years. We've been doing this. So we were generating great content, blogging, writing white papers, doing all this stuff. And as you say, that now does have its own momentum, which means as we generate new content, I think it gets recognized and shared more readily. But I've just got a different hurdle another rock to push up the hill instead. So while we can put that issue to bed, we're now looking at new types of things. So we're looking at, new challenges. So I guess it's right. It does get momentum, but we can't be complacent about that. We're always now thinking, what's the next thing? What's the next job we have to do? And as the agency has grown, what I've learned to do is then delegate responsibility for that content generation to somebody else in this particular example. And now we need to find somebody, what are we going to spearhead as our next big initiative to keep us in the forefront?
So what do you, the question that people ask me is what do you imagine, what do I imagine an agency looking like in 3 years' time? A potentially cookie-free world, a possibly voice-activated world, another platform will no doubt have appeared that we haven't even thought about. How do you plan for that?
And you've identified some of the big challenges. And if I were to add a couple of the other challenges that I'm keeping, the trend for taking these services in-house is probably something that we really need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking also about the fact that clients are picking and choosing the agencies they want to work with according to their specialisms. And our business model that I think has, again, been a huge part of our success has been the retainer model. So we would get clients on retainer, and we knew we would have the revenue stream coming in, we had the relationship going, and more clients are looking more project-based rather than these ongoing retainers. So these are other challenges that are also on all of our radars as agencies. But what
and AI.
And AI, and BI. And so as we look at it, what is the agency going to become? What is the agency, the future, going to look like, say, in 2 or 3 years? The three things I would say is, the first thing is, I am still incredibly buoyant. The marketplace is great. Business is good. Jump in. There's a lot going on. So I'm not, I have to say, feeling particularly worried about these things. If anything, I think there's huge growth potential. It's still growth potential. The second thing would be is that our people are going to have to change. So we do have teams of SEOs, we have teams of PPC, we have teams of developers. And these people, we need to be continuing to work with them to develop their skills and change their skills. So for example, if I were to say to you the magic word Python, which is, again, the thing at the moment in terms of being able to do business intelligence and programming, it's not as hard as it sounds. We've got teams of back-end web developers who have these skills, and they're going to be using these skills in a new way as part of our BI offering. And I guess the third thing we need to think about is that as we look at our team's skills, we need to be almost in a sense the master of the algorithm. So what we need to be doing is understanding what's happening in this AI, perhaps more correctly, machine learning space, and how do we respond and advise our clients. So rather than pulling the levers, which I think agencies are still to a certain extent doing at the moment, it's going to be changing into advising about the algorithm.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah. I think, to try and compete on what I call digit monkeys, is a journey.
That train's left the station. I don't think many successful agencies are doing that at the moment anyway.
You've got to go up the food chain. You've got to get into the boardroom. You've got to be sitting with the marketing director, working with them. What you want the marketing director to be actually saying to you is which products do you think we should be pushing the most? Not can you do £10,000 a month of PPC for us? You need to be as high up the food chain as you can in those strategic decisions, and that's where the where the agency can add real value. Otherwise, you're competing with Bangalore, and that's just a hiding to nothing. So,
and as an agency, I would say that, again, whether by design or by pure luck, as an agency, we never operated in that space particularly. So we always, again, back to that kind of thing in terms of Hallam's North Star. Part of that was also being almost a trusted business advisor, that you could talk to us kind of about any, and we've always been in that space. And I think, Robert, upon reflection, that has a lot to do with how we got to the size we are. Was the fact that we are perceived as that trusted business advisor.
So the book that people need to read is The Trusted Advisor by David Meister, who is an accountant by trade, but it's all about moving from being a supplier to being to becoming a trusted advisor, and then you can add value, and you're not purely charging on the hours. So how did you, I mean, one of the questions people might be wondering is, how did you fund this? I mean, you don't just go from 0 to 52 and it's all organically funded. You've got offices, you've got people, you've got departments. So what's the funding story behind that?
Yeah, so in the early days, like most startup businesses, it was self-funding. I was in the very fortunate position that my husband had a good job. He could then sustain me as we started to grow the business. We had a deal that, he would help make sure we got the mortgage paid. But as the business grew, there were the first funding stream that I took advantage of, and I think is an opportunity at the moment, particularly for businesses based, say, in the north of the UK, is there is a lot of grant funding available. So there's a huge amount of funding available. I took advantage of it over the years. My view is your taxes are paying for this. Take advantage of it. So I did get funding from the equivalent of our LEP, which is the Local Economic Partnership, through the chambers. There's a lot of money around it. 40% grant funding to buy capital equipment, 40% grant funding for training and development, and coaching was hugely advantageous. And that take us to a certain level. And then the numbers started to change, and we needed even more financial resources. And the best advice I got was, keep in touch with your bank manager, show him your business plan, let him know what's going on, open the kimono, make sure your bank manager knows what goes on, so that when it comes time, say that you need a loan or that you need an overdraft, A, it's not a surprise. He knows it's coming, or she knows it's coming. And B, there might even be the fact that they're helping you to plan for this. So it's not like you're rocking up and say, I need some cash, I need 100 grand for next month or something. They know what's happening. So I think for me personally, we have always had a very good working relationship with our bank. And we have then, as a result, been able to get loans at competitive rates and advice from the bank manager. But I think that's because on my part, I kept them informed as to what was going on, to the point that we even shared our business plan on a regular basis with our bank manager, and went out to him to the pub once in a while just to keep him in the loop as to what was going on. A lot of financial stuff's about trust, Robert, isn't it? That's the main thing.
Yeah. But I suspect that's much tougher for smaller agencies, because back in the day, there was a bank manager in the high street.
Yeah.
And now it's just, well, the bank has done everything it can until you're of interest to them. They've done everything they can to bash everything online and into an algorithm. But I mean,
I don't know if I'm allowed to give a plug, but we bank with a bank called Handelsbanken. And
right.
They do actually have real humans. And I could tell you the names of the guys that we work with.
Well, they pride themselves on being a proper old-fashioned banking principles bank, don't they?
We've had a very, very good relationship with them, and I would recommend them without hesitation.
Brilliant. Okay, cool.
I guess I shouldn't be plugging my bank, but anyway, I'm going to get some commission off of that.
Well,
I'm sure.
Well, no, you should, because I have this thing about my accountant. I love my accountant, and everyone goes, "You can't." I said, "I do. I love because he saves me loads of money. He makes me run a better business, and that's what everyone's accountant and everyone's bank manager, your whole team around you, they should be helping you. They shouldn't be a supplier. They should be a partner. So in this scale up journey that you were on, what was the help that you got? Who were the people? What were the pieces
Right.
around
So over the years, I have had a lot of coaching and development, both for me professionally and personally, for my role as the entrepreneur and founder. And we've also had coaching and development for different members of our team. I have on my desk, I did find it here. Do you want to see something really funny? Do you recognize this?
Oh, yes.
Who gave this
Wow.
to me? Who gave this to me?
I gave that to you.
Yes. So I was fortunate enough to be part of Google's own coaching program. And that was very, very helpful. Your team has advised us over time, but I would also add 2 other sources of great advice and guidance. The first thing I would say is we are based in Nottingham City Centre, and we have 2 world-class universities, and the University of Nottingham and Nottingham Trent University, and they have come in and run innovation sessions with us. They've advised us on stuff. So I think working with your university, for me, that's been a huge benefit. And then the third thing, so again, there's coaching and advisors like yourselves that has been hugely valuable, the universities. And then the third thing is to discover what kind of coaching do you really want and need. And there are like peer groups and meetups, and again, I know that you're organizing things, and over the years, I derived incredible benefit from an organization. I know I shouldn't say this on your podcast, but I will, through an organization called Vistage.
Yeah.
And I was a Vistage member for many years, and again, that suited my temperament. So I think what you need to do is find a coach that is going to galvanize you into action, or a mentor who can tell you what's happened. This is how it works. This is what's happened before. And I think I had the combination of coaching, which was to get the best out of me, and mentoring, which means, look, chick, you're not the first person to have done this. Let me tell you, here's some choices for you to think about. So I think it is I don't know about you think, but to me, it was the combination of coaching and mentoring.
I think it changes depending on what your challenges are, and what the stage of the business is, and what you just had. So I think one of the things that happens is people get kind of stuck on, oh, I've got this coaching or this system, I need to stick with it. And actually, the window of opportunity when you get the maximum benefit may only be 18 months or 2 years, and then suddenly, I've sucked everything out, or I've got this, or and then you move on. And having said that, I think there's also so half of me is saying keep moving, because sometimes you want short and sharp, and sometimes but I think there's also there's almost like an uncle that you want, someone who has actually seen you going through the highs and through the lows, some grey hair, to actually say, look, I saw you do this 5 years ago. And I think it's trying to find that balance of someone who's actually responding to what you need today, which could be as much about exit, or about personal needs, or about finance, or about processes, or about systems, or about strategy, as much as having that longer game going on. So I think that's probably the ideal piece. But yeah, I mean, for me, I've got my mastermind group coming up at the end of this week, and I know that they will challenge me very, very firmly about some things that I say, and I need it. I need tough love, for want of a better word. So yeah. So question: if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
If I had to do it over again, I think the first thing is that I would have been braver. I think I recognize in myself that one of my faults is kind of like analysis paralysis. I think deeply about it. I plan things. I want it to be well. And on the one hand, I think that's contributed to our success because we were always prepared for these kind of changes. On the other hand, I think just doing it is also a good business strategy. Just go in there, say yes, ask questions later, because there are people there to support you. So if I had to do it again, I think probably I would have set the company up a few years earlier than I did. I might have been involved in the merger earlier than I did. So I think in hindsight, I would have tried to even accelerate the growth. part of my fear is maybe I wasn't competent to do it. There's always that imposter syndrome, isn't there? That, am I good enough? Am I real? How did I get here? How did I get a company with 50 people? But yeah. I hope none of Team Hallam are listening to this. Yeah. But I do think in hindsight, if I had to do it again, looking back, I think I would have done things more quickly. I would have been braver. I would have trusted my preparations that I had done and just gotten on with it. I don't know if that's an issue with other agency owners or not, but
yeah, I think when we look back, we always think, oh, I could have sacked them sooner. I mean, I know the first person I sacked, it took me a year to get around to it. And everything seemed so important at the time, and then when you get past it, it's somehow you're just on to the next thing. So I think what you said earlier on about pregnancy is absolutely spot on. That at the time, something seemed absolutely monumental, and so on and so forth, and then a year goes by, and it's like, what's it that bad? I'm not sure.
I did that. Yeah.
Well, I can't comment on it, but just run me through the merger, because I'd be really interested to know what your experience is on that one.
Yeah, the merger has been hugely successful, and again, for agency owners who are looking at it, I would advise you, it's a great way to power your growth. So I think the merger of the two agencies has been successful. So looking back on it, over the years, Hallam did not have a web design, web development arm. So we worked in partnership, in tandem, with another agency called Big Spring that was owned by two guys, Julio Taylor and John Martin. So we worked together maybe for 2 years. Things were going well. And I think we recognized there would be synergy if we were to work together. So we did go through the merger process, and to my surprise, the merger process really does take about 2 years. By the time you get all the paperwork done and all the alignment, and oh my golly, that was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. But the bit that was more work than I expected to be, of course, is the culture of bringing together two different kinds of businesses. Exactly. So I think if you recall earlier, I talked about Hallam being trusted business advisor, plain speaking, results driven. And then we brought in Big Spring. These are the guys wearing black t-shirts and rock. And again, John and Julio were both in a rock band. So it was, clearly I am not rock band material, but actually having those two types of personalities has, the whole genuinely is greater than the sum of the parts. So by going through this merger process, we did start finding ourselves winning bigger, higher value contracts than we would have won individually. So on the one hand, it was a good business decision, but I think we did underestimate the culture shock of bringing together two companies. We did all come together under one roof, so we're all in the one building. We now have 3 floors in the building, which is actually another thing we could talk about is use of space. How do you use your space and the impact on culture? And then again, we were very fortunate to get good advice in terms of the merger process from an advisor that we trusted. So I think the fact that we both trusted our advisor made it so it wasn't a very contentious adversarial merger. It was a really quite amicable merger that we both wanted it. We both were pulling in the same direction. And I think that had a lot to do with it.
You were the dominant player?
Yeah, so we did decide to cut. So we were much larger. Hallam was a much larger agency. Hallam, again, I think was generating most of the leads and the work. So we all came together under the Hallam umbrella. Yeah.
2 years. That's interesting.
Yeah, the process takes a lot longer than I would have thought, than I anticipated. And again, I think it is good with the merger. It is good to get this kind of advice to make sure that things like shareholder agreements and all this kind of planning. You talk about learn something new every day. For all of us, all the parties involved, there was a lot for us to learn, and it's cool to learn new stuff. Yeah. So I would say the acquisition, merger and acquisition growth path should be something that should be on agency owners' minds. Definitely, I'd recommend it highly.
Okay. And if you were to
So if
think,
anybody's interested, get in touch. My name is Susan Hallam.
well, don't joke. I mean, there's an awful lot of, at the moment, there's an awful lot of people saying, I'm at 15, this is turning into really hard work. It might be quite nice just to go off and do something else. And there's a lot of 50, 70, 100 person agencies saying, oh, we're looking for someone because we wouldn't mind 15 extra people. I do think that the conversation about mergers and sales is greatly exaggerated. It's kind of, the spotlight's always on it, so it appears to be going on all the time. And if you look at the number of agencies there are compared with actually the number of deals, it's relatively few. But I think that it's really good to hear a good news story, because you hear some horror stories where it goes horribly wrong. And colleagues of mine who've recently been the smaller partner going for the big guys, they've been really clever by very rarely going for the first offer, by actually thinking through the culture, the longevity, and what will actually happen. So it is a long game, and yeah, that's great.
And I think, Rob, that's about being open for the owners on both sides, being open and honest in terms of what they're looking for. And for within our own discussion, I would have thought within many agencies, it has to do with succession planning in terms of, what's going to be happening in 3 years, what's going to be happening in 5 years, what's going to be happening in 10 years. And to have that's just about having open and frank conversations to make sure everybody understands what it is that we're looking to do with the company.
Yeah, everyone should be on the same page. I mean, it's
Definitely, yeah.
It's great. I mean, I love that this just your frankness about how that went. That's absolutely lovely. So, I guess it's the secret sauce question, which is, what is it that you think, on reflection, got you to where you are now?
Yeah. As I look back, over 20 years, trying to think, what have I done differently, say, to other agencies that I've seen that have not grown, or other agencies, actually, there's a number, as you said, that have gone to the wall, that have actually closed down. The three things that I think, the first thing is, I think I am naturally optimistic. I do think that, when the going gets tough, there is light at the end of the tunnel. That, my dad always said to me, this too will pass. So that when things are not going well, if the road's bumpy, it's going to pass. Trust me, you'll get over this. And likewise, even when you're having huge success, even success will pass. So celebrate now. Don't forget to celebrate your success when it's happening right now, because it's going to pass.
So that phrase is list two. I didn't quite catch what
this too shall pass. Have you not heard? There you go. Anyway, Bruce Morgan, this too shall pass.
Oh, this too shall pass. Okay.
This too shall pass.
Okay, this too shall pass. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to be optimistic, and that things will be good. Think the best in people, get the best out of people, hope the best for your clients, expect the best technology. I think the second thing, though, also has to be perseverance and tenacity. So when the going gets tough, you cannot throw in the towel. You just can't. So I think the idea that, and so I think that resilience and tenacity and perseverance is essential for a business owner. And that when the going gets tough as well, it's just water off a duck's back. I'm going to keep moving forward on this one. And I think the third thing is, and this is a little bit of a joke, is that I have always invested in the highest quality office chairs. And that's because, and I'm sitting here on my beautiful comfy chair, it's hard work. This whole business about 9 to 5 culture, work-life balance, it's not true. It isn't a balance. There'll be sprints when I work really, really hard and I work 24/7. And then there'll be a different sprint where it's calmer. But I think part of the reason for my success is I do work really hard. I work long hours. I love my business. I think about it all the time. And if you think you're going to make money while you're asleep, it's not going to happen. It does. But work is not like that. So good furniture, optimism, and tenacity. They're my three magic ingredients.
Absolutely brilliant. And Vistage and Handelsbank and Nottingham Digital Festival.
And the Nottingham Digital Summit, 23rd of June. We've got Barry Adams speaking. We've got Yoast speaking. We've got Zoopla speaking. So I'd love to see all your, and you will be supporting the Nottingham Refugee Forum. So we would love to see. Last year we raised just over £20,000, and I'm hoping to beat the mark this year.
Fantastic. So all of Susan's details, URLs and so on and so forth are going to come on after us. I can only say thank you very, very much, Susan. It feels the time is that by. We've gone through loads of stuff. It's kind of one of those interviews that I think people actually need to go through again slowly and dissect sort of line by line, because it's just absolutely rich with stuff to take away. So all I can say is thank you so much, Susan. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks. It's always great it's always good to pick your brains and get your thoughts as well. So thanks again. Thanks again for inviting me. A real pleasure and great to see you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.